good day to you wherever you are in the world. It could be the morning, the afternoon, or the evening. No matter where you are, sending best wishes. We hope that you are safe and healthy, and that your family and friends are as healthy and safe as possible as well. My name is Simon Chadwick. I am Professor of Eurasian Sport at EM Lyon Business School. I'm based in Paris and Shanghai, although I'm in the UK at the moment. And may I welcome you to this session on Innovating World Cup Legacy to Create Long-Term Impact. The whole session, the whole purpose of the Generation Amazing programme over the next 2 or 3 days is, amongst other things, to discuss education and learning. And one of the things that I've learned during the pandemic is how to essentially how to sit here for days on end looking at multiple screens. So if you find me looking over here or looking over here or looking down here, I'm not being rude, I'm not losing interest. I just want you to know that I'm looking at multiple screens and trying to move my eyes in lots of different directions. So please do keep that in mind as we go through the session this afternoon. What we're going to do is we're going to begin with some introductions, and then I do have some set questions that I would like to ask. But for anybody who's following the session online and perhaps you would like to ask a question, there is an opportunity. We will try and build into the session as we go through questions from the audience. So I can see people entering and leaving, and I can also see people as they're posting questions. Okay, so without much further ado, can I go firstly to Nasser? Great to see you again, Nasser. I think we see each other every month nowadays. Can I get you to introduce yourself and obviously tell people who you are, what you do, and also make a little bit of an introductory statement around the theme of this particular webinar.
Sure, of course. Thank you so much, Simon. And it's always a pleasure to see you and everybody else. Jason, Lex, Steve, thank you so much for joining this panel. Basically, I think, I'll just say a few words on Generation Amazing. So we started, like, His Excellency, the SG mentioned, in the opening remarks that, we started almost 10 years ago. Football for Development was part of the bid for Qatar 2022. And, the idea is that we wanted to kind of help disadvantaged youth and in a lot of marginalized communities through football. So the idea was that, okay, how can we do that? We set up a program, Football for Development Coaching, Train the Trainer, a program that now is being sort of revamped and further developed even. And we're looking at, basically since the beginning of COVID and, all the challenges with traveling and training people, that are not physically here, we decided that we're also looking at more efficient ways to deliver our program, which is going to be launched, hopefully soon online. And, we're working with partners like, CONCACAF, Jason, the team at Jason Roberts and the team at CONCACAF. I think that's going to be an amazing program. I'll let Jason talk about that a little bit further down the line on this session. But, so we built, a couple of pitches for refugee kids in Lebanon, Jordan, and then we expanded, over the last 10 years, we've been able to reach and target 500,000 beneficiaries through our programs. We are currently in over 28 communities in 8 countries at the moment and expanding. And the idea is that as a legacy for the World Cup, we want to continue to deliver Generation Amazing in a lot of different marginalized, disadvantaged communities. And at the moment, we're looking at how we can kind of create a more sustainable model of Generation Amazing in terms of not just in terms of programming, but also in terms of infrastructure and foundation as well. So there's a lot of conversations that we're having right now with a lot of partners like Qatar Foundation and some other partners locally here in terms of sustaining the legacy of Generation Amazing.
Thank you, Nasser. I'm going to call Alexandra Lex. That's not being me being disrespectful. She said I could call her Lex. So Lex, if you could tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and the work that you're involved in.
Thanks, Simon. And people who know me as Lex, so it's all good. And I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you, Nasser. And great to see you again, Steve and Jason. I'm actually the outgoing managing director of Beyond Sport, which is a global organization that supports and advises and funds the use of sport for social change, and have been working there since the inception in 2009, joined the team at Qatar Foundation specifically around the World Cup Master Program. And my focus is really on the legacy of the World Cup, specifically around the values of Qatar Foundation, whether that be disruptive education, sustainability, innovation. We really want to look and see how we can use the power of football, the power of the World Cup, to really make a difference in those areas, and see how we can make a long-term impact, both within Education City, the headquarters of Qatar Foundation, the beautiful campus there, but also beyond, throughout the nation and also globally. So very excited to have joined the team there. And through that process, really looking at how this World Cup and how Generation Amazing is innovating and really kind of looking at what legacy means in a different way for major sporting events, and how that can really manifest itself through different social issues, whether that be refugees, whether that be socioeconomic, or whether that be around culture exchange. So really excited to work on that. In my role at Beyond Sport, we supported many organizations that have made an incredible difference through major sporting events, whether that be London 2012 or South Africa 2010, which is how I met Steve and learned about the amazing work that Kick for Life does, but definitely how it made an impact through the World Cup. So thrilled to be here with Steve, sort of coming full circle in a way, and glad to be here.
Thank you for that. Jason, I think you might have scored a goal against my team, Jason, but that's another conversation for another day, I think. Jason, if you could introduce yourself and tell us about the work that you're involved in.
Thank you, Simon. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Lex, Steve, great to see you. Of course, Nasser, my friend, thank you very much. And everybody at Generation Amazing, thank you for this kind invitation. I'm very much looking forward to being a part of this panel. Simon, thank you very much for reiterating that I actually did manage to score a goal in my playing career. I'm not sure what team you support, but
goals, Jason. You scored a few goals.
Okay, so I'll take that from you. Thank you very much. So as a brief introduction, my name is Jason Roberts. I am the Director of Development for CONCACAF, the governing body for 41 different member associations in Central America, North America, and of course the Caribbean. Our focus is to develop and promote our sport throughout those countries. As Director of Development, my remit is very much around coaching education and the technical development of football within this region. In addition to that, we head up all of the women's football development alongside Carina LeBlanc, who I know will be joining on this webinar over the next few days. We also focus on club licensing and promoting professional football, in addition to looking at our corporate social responsibility, or also how do we use sport, in our case football, as a vehicle for social change. So since I joined CONCACAF 3 years ago, I think the focus has very much been on, yes, developing the sport, yes, very much on competitions, etc. But in light of what we're speaking about today, a core part of that is, what is the legacy we're leaving behind? How are we leaving our communities and our member associations, our countries and our region in a better space as a result of our sport? And as you mentioned, Simon, in a previous life and a previous body, I was a professional football player, and I started the Jason Roberts Foundation in 2010, which seems like a lifetime ago. And that really opened up my eyes to the fact that, yes, it's great to be able to play our sport. Yes, it's a great privilege, but I think it's vitally important that we do something with it. And the Jason Roberts Foundation allowed me to engage with communities, marginalized communities, hard to reach communities, of which I come from, and really promoting sport and in many cases, football is that vehicle for social change. How can you use what you learn by playing the sport in your life, and what do you learn from that, and how can you make your life better and make your communities better and create young leaders? So I've been really proud to have been part of that throughout my football career, and very excited to tell you a little bit more about what we're doing at CONCACAF with this Sports for Social Change agenda.
Yes, and thank you. Steve, good to meet you. And again, Steve, a little bit about who you are, what you do, and the work that you're involved in.
Thanks, Simon. And yeah, hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here. Yeah, so I'm the co-founder of Kick for Life. We're an NGO which delivers a range of health, education, gender and employability programs in Lesotho, a small country in Southern Africa. In that capacity, we are a charity, but we're also a football club. We've got elite men's and women's teams that play in the top flight divisions in Lesotho. And then alongside that, we're also a social enterprise. So we have a restaurant and a hotel and conference centre that are designed to generate funds that are reinvested back into our football programmes, as well as providing training and employment opportunities for young people who are coming through the programmes. We've been around since 2005. And a real game-changing moment for Kick for Life was the 2010 FIFA World Cup in South Africa. Given our proximity to where the World Cup was taking place, it just created a raft of opportunities for us to scale our programs, to access new funding, to build a centre, and it really changed the organisation and sent us on a new trajectory going forward. You know, that today that impact actually extends beyond Lesotho. We have a training and development service whereby we work with sport for development organisations all over the world, helping them to build capacity to set up their own social enterprises so that they can be more sustainable as well. And that really, yeah, is a legacy of 2010. So looking forward to looking at how we can apply our experience of that World Cup and its legacy to 2022 as well.
Thank you, Steve. Following the introductions, can I again address the audience? We've actually got a pretty healthy group of people, a healthy number of people here in this session. So please do feel free to send questions in, send observations. Hopefully we can create an opportunity to ask the panelists some of the questions. If I could switch back to the panelists, and as I was listening to the introductions, I was thinking about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And I don't want to go through all 17 goals or whatever it is, but can I ask the panelists as we go through the session this afternoon if you can refer at any point to those sustainable development goals and how they're informing or shaping what you do. I think this is a really interesting backdrop to this webinar. For those of you who are listening to the session and are unfamiliar with the sustainable development goals, I'm an academic. I set homework. So your homework for tonight is go away and look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Can I ask a question though, and I'll go back to you, Nasser, if I may, to begin with. Is the word legacy is part of the webinar title, and several times people in the room already have mentioned this word legacy. But what does it mean? And can you give us some examples of what legacy is?
Yeah, sure, of course. So, when Generation Amazing was formed in 2010, this was looked at from that angle. And I think, there's a lot of legacy aspects to the Qatar 2022 World Cup that, in terms of, at a very, very early stage, there was always a thought and sort of a lot of thinking and brainstorming about how to leave a legacy, not just for Qatar, but also for the region. So I think, one of the things that, I feel like, resonated and kind of built a lot of momentum over the last couple of years is Generation Amazing, as a program that kind of expanded to help, a lot of disadvantaged youth in the region, and then kind of now is a global sort of initiative. But that's just one legacy aspect. There's a lot of other legacy aspects from a sustainability perspective, from, an environmental perspective, from a stadium, perspective. There's a lot of, legacy and thought put into all the stadium designs that will be hosting the World Cup and the FIFA matches in 2022. So all these stadiums have been sort of designed to be used as community spaces post 2022, or different sort of, some stadiums, for example, Ras Ba'aboud, which is one of the stadiums that is currently called the Lego Stadium, is going to be totally dismantled after the tournament, because we don't need to have as many stadiums as, moving forward after the tournament. So there's a lot of legacy aspects, but I'm going to focus on, Generation Amazing. So Generation Amazing basically is the human and social legacy program under the Supreme Committee for Delivery and Legacy. And to kind of talk about legacy a little bit more, again, we've built safe spaces for people, a lot of young kids to come play, learn about football for development. And, this, our pitches and our programs acted as safe spaces for these communities that a lot of times didn't have access to infrastructure or didn't have access to training programs or youth programs in these communities. So in a lot of ways, we created these spaces, and now we're kind of going back to these, communities that we were in, to look at, the other sort of aspects and how we can kind of continue to help them and to create a sustainable model. I think, one of the things that we're learning, actually we're learning a lot from, Kick for Life and my colleague Steve is, the sustainable model of a football club. So that social enterprise, aspect is really important. And that's something that we're trying to now introduce in all of our pitches and over the, 10 countries that we are currently in. And going back to your comment, Simon, about UN SDGs, I hope that everybody that's listening in, tuning in, does some homework or research if they don't already know about UN SDGs. But I think one of the things that we all realize, and I think everybody on this panel would agree, is that sports really accelerates the development and the achievement of these UN Sustainable Development Goals, whether it's gender equality, inclusiveness, a lot of different aspects, and a lot of these challenges that these communities face are addressed by the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we use sports as a vehicle to address those challenges and those issues.
Just a quick comeback, if I can, Nasser. You used a phrase, safe spaces. For people in the room who are unfamiliar with this term, safe spaces, what is that?
So basically, our community clubs or community pitches are, developed to kind of be a safe space for all community members, boys, girls, of sort of all ages, to come and be in a place where they can play and learn, and to have that safe environment from a safeguarding perspective from a lot of different angles. And a lot of these communities often lack these spaces because, a lot of times even access to schools is difficult in some of these areas. So, a lot of disadvantaged youth kind of don't have an opportunity to, have some spaces like these within their community to kind of just go play football, play, but also learn about, different UN SDGs, different social issues, gender equality, for example. One of our most successful stories is actually from Pakistan. And I see there's a comment here from Osama, who is in Pakistan. But, Mahira Ahmed, one of our advocates from 2016, I believe, went through a Generation Amazing program and then decided to create a women's league within her community for girls in Pakistan to play football. Obviously, with the different social issues that Pakistan faces, girls playing football is not something that is very, very much accepted. So there was a lot of resistance that Mahira faced, and she was, attacked by a lot of community members to a level that she even received, I believe, death threats to her and her family members. But Mahira continued, and she was very resilient, and she pushed and continued to develop her league until at some point she kept getting a lot of international recognition, and last year she was recognized at the UNGA in New York by the UNDP office of Pakistan. So I think that on its own is a great success story that we that's just one example of what these safe spaces can achieve for these community members.
Steve, from your work, as you outlined it earlier, how do you see legacy, and in terms of your project, what do you think are some of the legacies that you're creating?
Yeah, amazing to hear that story from Nasser. Really, really powerful story. And I think at Kick for Life we see it in two different ways. Firstly, it's direct human stories. So a good example from Kick for Life is my colleague now called Pookie, who came along as a participant in 2010, and at the time she'd recently been a victim of gender-based violence. She'd been raped and shot, and she hadn't been able to speak to anybody about this. And at Kick for Life, she found a place where she was able to open up and start to recover from what had happened. And moving forward, she progressed to being a coach, was delivering programs and activities to other young people and supporting them. And then today, she now runs our gender-based program, Girls United, young girls on their journey, running our women's football team. Amazing job with that. So pretty incredible story of her journey, and that obviously touches on SDG number 5, gender equality.
Gold star for that, Steve. Well done.
Thank you very much. And number 3 as well, good health and well-being. So that's powerful. But also we consider the legacy in terms of statistics and evidence that sits behind some of the stories. So, for example, 95% of our participants say they have increased self-efficacy in terms of their health. We've referred more than 1,000 young people to HIV testing and medical treatment. We've created 100 jobs through our social enterprises. So I think thinking in terms of legacy, it's important to look at those individual stories and then look at the wider community and societal impact behind it as well.
Come straight back to Steve on that. You obviously mentioned a particular case of a woman who was involved, obviously, in a really harrowing incident. Moving from that to her feeling a greater sense of self-worth and self-respect and feeling safe again, if I can say that. What did that involve? Getting from point A to point B, what did that involve? Yeah,
well, she initially came along to Kick for Life attracted by the chance to be able to play football, and that was obviously an important part of it. But also, she found a safety net and a network of young people and coaches who were able to empathise with her experience to a certain extent and to talk to her, and she was able to access counselling. And it was a journey. It took a while, but eventually, she was able to move on to that position where she became the mentor and was able to support other young people on that journey. So yeah, really, really fantastic example of transitioning from a really, really difficult position to being one where she is actually leading others through similar challenges.
Very amazing. Jason, you're obviously working across a big area in a somewhat different part of the world. Do you see legacy in the same way as has already been outlined, or you have a different notion of legacy? And have you got some examples from CONCACAF of legacy and where it's been successful?
I certainly do see it in the same way as it's been described, certainly by Steve and certainly from Nasir, in regards to it being very multifaceted. Whether you're talking about the way that the bid, a potential bid will be put together, if you look at the way that a tournament would be put together, or even if you look at the way the stadiums are built, all of those can go under that banner of legacy. But I think if we're talking about that human element, about how you make that difference to people's lives in the way that Steve outlined, I think there's a lot of things that go into that. And I think first and foremost, it is the provision and the access to sport, and in this case, football. And I think if you look at where CONCACAF were in 2016, when he came in as the president, his focus was on a one CONCACAF vision, which is how do we break down those barriers of access to the sport? Because without that, then none of these untangibles, none of these things that we're talking about here are able to happen. And that's why, you talk about a football first vision. That's actually about playing the sport, ensuring that the sport, football, is being played. And that's why the investment in the CONCACAF League or the Caribbean Club Championships or the Nations League or the increasing numbers within our own CONCACAF Gold Cup. Those are all flagship tournaments which actually drive the interest and the love of the sport for those that are playing it, the volunteers, the coaches, the people watching the game. But actually, it's about the investment in youth. And we are, I'm proud to say, the only confederation in the world which has a U15 tournament where we bring all of our countries to a centralized space to play, because we recognize that the barriers of entry is, in our region, the access to the sport. And now what do we do with it? What's the legacy of that, to your question, Simon? And that was really about us creating a curriculum, creating a methodology, something which we could reach into these communities and invest in them, invest in those communities, invest in young people, and make sure that it was community-led, volunteer-led. And that's how we came up with our Next Play program, which is really about how do we promote those stronger communities, how do we promote inclusion, fun, friendship, all of the things we all know that our sport gives to people. And vitally important to that, Simon, to your point about the SDGs, my personal favorite is the partnerships to achieve the goal. Because without those partnerships, only so much can be done. And we certainly had to reach out to governments, to our member associations, to local government, to schools, to be able to have a program which provided the provision of access to our sport after school for thousands of young people across 10 of our countries, hundreds of volunteers, community leaders and coordinators. And that program really was the spark of us really understanding that the power of our sport and the power of actually the brand of football and CONCACAF actually could have a long-lasting legacy in how we invest in people and invest in these communities. So that is how we see the legacy of our sport, through working with people, creating those community leaders who can therefore go out and take sport for development as a theme and as an agenda, and bring our support and our partners to that. So I think that the real legacy from my side, what I've seen to be hugely impactful is yes, the infrastructure projects, yes, the support, but actually how do you invest in people and communities?
Yes, and I before I come to you, Lex, and we continue, I want to question as it goes through. I don't want to lose it. Ahmed Ali, I am going to come back to you, Ahmed. I think that's a really great question. I'll alert the panel members to it, which is, what are some of the obstacles to achieving legacy, which I think is a really great question. So we'll come back to you, Ahmed. Don't let me forget you. But if I can turn back to Lex, obviously you're transitioning between two organizations and two really large, significant organizations in different parts of the world, doing amazing work. Is your view of legacy the same in those two positions, in those two roles, or is it going to be different? And are there good examples of legacy that you've seen in both of those roles?
I think absolutely my view of legacy is the same. And I think just kind of commenting back around what everyone just said, when we're talking about legacy just means what is left behind, what happens after something. It doesn't necessarily mean positive. It doesn't necessarily mean good. And I think what everyone here on this panel is talking about is what the positive legacy is, what's the positive impact. And from my perspective, and just seeing kind of the various sort of approaches of legacy over the years in different sporting events, whether that be the Olympics or the World Cup or the Cricket World Cup, you know, where the success is when we're talking about positive legacy is that it's intentional and it's strategic. And going back to what Jason was saying is that it's self-sustained, right? It's investing in communities and young people so that they can lead and that they can create their own reality. And that's, in my perspective, where the sort of success comes out of. So the reason why the safe spaces that Generation Amazing are building ideally will succeed is that they are investing in a sustainable model. They're investing in what a social enterprise looks like for those young people, for those safe spaces. The reason why legacy of CONCACAF events through this sort of investment model works is that they're using football as a tool, as a hook to engage, but then they're giving ownership over to communities. I think that's a key kind of learning around what positive legacy is, especially around major sporting events. I mean, if you look back to even all the way back to 1984, Los Angeles, the LA 84 Foundation to this day is still investing in communities in Southern California. And that's because they gave ownership over to the city, and they gave ownership over to Southern California programs. The same can be said around London 2012. I mean, there's so many legacy programs that came out of it, but those that succeeded are those that really invested in self-sustaining models such as London Sport, which focused on startups and social enterprises within London. So I think from that perspective, we're all kind of on the same page, and that's really my sort of idea of what successful legacy looks like. The beautiful thing about the UN SDGs is that it now gives us a framework in which to operate, and a framework in which we can measure our success when we're looking at this. So we can look at the indicators and the targets for gender equality and say, this is what our legacy plan is going to look like, and these are the types of things we're trying to address. So the UN SDGs provides this like beautiful way that we can sort of identify the ways that we want to make a difference. For Qatar Foundation specifically, it's flipping it a little bit on its head from what Jason said, which I completely agree. A huge part of major sporting event legacy needs to be about sport, needs to be about increasing participation of sport. From a foundation perspective, it's about what that means for social progress. What does that mean for education? So if more young people are playing sport, if we do that intentionally, then how can we ensure the next generation is a more inclusive generation? How can we ensure the next generation is more aware of what other people are like, what their backgrounds are, and understanding around that, whether that be a different gender or a different culture or a different background. And so there are certain sports elements and programs that are really being developed right now within the foundation. If you're sticking around for the next few days, you'll hear about the Ability Friendly program, you'll hear about regenerative education program, and these are all around how to use sport to push that needle forward around education, around equality, around inclusion. So that's really the perspective of the Qatar Foundation when we're talking about legacy.
I'm just again looking at questions. Wala, I think, Wala Nimri. I'm going to come to you, Wala, in due course and ask the question. But just to go back to Ahmed, and I'll put this out there for all of the panelists. What kind of obstacles are you facing in trying to ensure a positive legacy? What kind of obstacles are you facing? And in response to those obstacles, can you perhaps give us some insights into good leadership, good management, and how you actually overcome those obstacles? Jason, is this something you want to lead off on?
Yes, thank you, Sam. I think, obviously, from our perspective at CONCACAF, dealing with a variety of different countries, different traditions, different realities on the ground, I think one of the challenges we face is actually recognizing sport, recognizing that it's not just about to an elite career, that actually there are so many intangibles that you can benefit from, not only from those who are playing the sport, but by those that are teaching the sport, by the education that can be achieved around it. To Lexi's point, which I think is absolutely right, is that the sport is just the hook to bring the people to wherever that safe space will be. And then what can you teach them whilst they're engaged? I think the challenge for us is the attitude around that, from Guatemala to Nicaragua to Grenada to St. Lucia to Trinidad to USA to Mexico, is very different. So I think we have a real job on our hands and a very exciting opportunity to ensure that we can bring more people around, more organizations, more influential people around the idea that actually it's not just about the elite pathway, it is about the access to the sport, and through that access to the sport, how can we educate people appropriately to affect their community in a positive way? From our perspective at CONCACAF, a strong part of that has been around safeguarding. Whilst we are accrediting coaches to be able to deliver football, how do we ensure that we're teaching them about appropriate education around safeguarding young people and creating those safe spaces that Nasser spoke about earlier, and then taking that into their life? So I think those are the more important elements than who won or who lost or who can control the ball or who's the better footballer. Is actually how can we educate those who are who are shaping policy? How can we work with them in light of those partnerships for the goals? And how do we ensure that through that education, through that collaboration, we are making a difference in these communities?
Nasser, you got a view on obstacles that you faced and what the best ways to tackle those obstacles is, and how leaders and managers can play a part in delivering on those on the challenges posed by those obstacles?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the biggest obstacle that faces us right now is the global pandemic, and I think this has taught us a lot of lessons, and sustainability is a big part of it. Training people on the ground, building capacity, all these things come into place. When you're not able to physically be in a community or physically travel to go, like for our master coaches to be somewhere, it's that's something that we realized, and we've been working over the last couple of months to really look at how we can deliver a football for development coaching program that is going to be fully delivered online without us having to have necessarily an interaction with people on the ground. So the idea behind that, and looking at from a legacy perspective as well, the idea behind that is that it would be an open education resource, and anyone in any community that has access to internet can enroll in this course and get a degree to become a community coach that's certified and accredited by different football associations, like CONCACAF, FIFA, Qatar Football Association. Depending on the region where you are, we can work with the different confederations or federations, for example. So this is something that going back to Lex's point, about foundations, and this is how we're looking at education. I think is the main pillar, because I think building capacity and having people that are on the ground that can roll out programs and continue to kind of build capacity, and there's the trainer model. That's something that we realize it has a great value and an advantage. So I think that's kind of coming out of this pandemic, and hopefully, we again, this, for example, let's take this, this festival, we delivered this festival last year face-to-face. We had it in Doha, in Qatar Foundation, Oxygen Park, we're working with QF, and this year, obviously, because of the pandemic, we're now all, talking to each other through our the internet. So I think that's one example of how we faced an obstacle and now we overcame it. We found solutions. We're still connected, and I think this is the reason why we chose the theme of this year's conference, or the festival, sorry. But, connectedness is something that, regardless of all the obstacles that we faced over the last 6 to 8 or however many months, we're still connected. We still continue to talk. We had a call with Steve a couple of weeks ago. Lex, we're in touch on a daily basis. Obviously, Simon, we're speaking constantly. Jason as well. So I think this is one way that we can come over any obstacle. To be honest, I think if we work together, I think one of the things that we realize is the partnerships bring a lot of value. Working with the football industry, but also working with foundations like Qatar Foundation, working with other organizations, street football, SFW, Street Football World, has been sort of one of our strongest partners that we worked with over the last couple of years. Different NGOs, different, the idea is that we shouldn't try to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of work that has been done in a lot of areas. The work that Steve is doing right now in Lesotho, and this is just one example. Instead of us trying to recreate the wheel, we're learning from Steve, and he's giving us advice and sort of helping us and walking us through his journey to learn from his mistakes and his success stories. So I think this is one way that we're all connected at the end of the day, and we all need to work with each other and have this constant dialogue. I think that's one of the most important things.
Just Steve, yeah, okay, sorry, Lex, yeah, please.
Sorry, I think I'm on a delay from you. I apologize. I was just going to firstly just follow on from what Nasser shared around the obstacles being a barrier and or obstacles being an opportunity. And really, when we're talking about the pandemic, it's very possible that Qatar 2022 might be one of the first events, that major sporting events that fans can see live and actually can attend. And there's a huge opportunity there of what that could mean, especially in terms of legacy, and especially in terms of what that means around inclusion and cultural exchange. So I think we could look at this as an opportunity, despite the many tragedies that have happened as a result of the pandemic, and definitely agree about the connectivity and what that means. But if we are talking about barriers and obstacles, I think one of the main ones that I've seen in the past in our work at Beyond Sport, but also assuming it's similar around this current major sporting event, is just preconceived notions around what sport can do, and the idea that actually a major sporting event is just a huge hoopla and a big celebration, and that's all that it can achieve, and it costs a lot of money, and it costs a lot of time, and that's that. And so overcoming that by showing how sport can really make a difference, and showing how sport can really address political issues, social issues, economic issues, is crucial. And that comes down to measurement and evaluation, and really kind of being able to show tangible impact as a result of sport, as a result of events. And I think that that's something that everyone on this panel is doing really, really well. But that's certainly a barrier that I've seen in the past. And of course, that goes hand in hand with assumptions and financial kind of barriers, right? So as soon as you sort of unlock that knowledge of what sport can do to address these crucial issues that we're all facing as a society, that then further kind of provides opportunities financially, as well as socially.
Obstacles, how you overcome the obstacles?
Yeah, so a major obstacle that we've faced over the years is providing access for girls and young women to be able to play football. Lesotho is and remains a male-dominated country where girls are marginalised in different areas of society, and one of those is on the football pitch. And we were really proactive in that. We worked closely with the Lesotho FA and a number of other organisations to actually create the first women's Super League in the country, and create that arena where women and young girls could have a chance to actually play. So that's been powerful in itself. But what's really emerged is that those young footballers have become role models and are actually going out there and changing perceptions wider in society. So from the football pitch, they're able to change things in the workplace, school, in relationships. And actually, earlier this year, we made an announcement to become the first top flight football club in the world to have gender equal budgets for our men's and women's teams. So equal pay, equal investment in our youth systems, and obviously this is it. This is in Lesotho. This is one place, but we're hoping that it will trigger other top flight clubs to consider making this move and really making a statement, because it's a powerful statement. It's a powerful statement in Lesotho for the girls that we work with, but hopefully, as well as changing things there within the sports industry, and I guess thinking about legacy of a major tournament, it's about the legacy that you can have and the impact you can have on vulnerable people immediately, but also how you can change things for the long term. Whether that's empowering organisations that are going to last for 10 years, or setting new standards of environmental protection, or building partnerships that can scale impact in the future. So that's probably the biggest challenge we've faced.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I'm just going to say something in response to what Lex said earlier. My research team and me were actually surveying on behalf of the Supreme Committee football fans worldwide right now, because we want to know what they're thinking, what they're feeling about Qatar 2022. And so we've got some preliminary results, but we're working on more follow-up. So it's a really interesting area. I'm running out of Post-it notes. This is just too much. I'm trying to look at different screens and write Post-it notes down. There's just so much to talk about. I want to go back to Wala, though, because I promised her that we would. And I'm going to go to you, Nasser, to begin with, because it was specifically addressed to you. But then I'm going to move to everybody else in the room today, the other panelists. And it's as far as Generation Amazing is concerned, Nasser, what do you think you have achieved so far, and what have you still got left to do? And I'm going to ask everybody else the same question too. So what have you achieved so far, and what have you got left to do?
So, one of the biggest milestones is reaching 500,000 beneficiaries. So over the last year, 10 years, we've been able to target, that number. And we decided from our leadership that, we wanted to increase and we want to target 1 million beneficiaries, young, disadvantaged youth globally by 2022. So that's sort of our target right now, and working with, CONCACAF and other partners. This is how we're trying to, kind of continue to promote football for development, and to continue to kind of use this angle of football for good, and link it as a legacy to the World Cup. We're continuing to work with CONCACAF is one example. IFRC, the International Federation for Red Cross and Red Crescent, is another sort of key partnership that we are developing and recently announced, as well as we're looking at 4 countries and working with national societies under the Red Cross, Red Crescent, to deliver football for development programs. And so, this is sort of our target. And obviously for Generation Amazing, one of the biggest legacies as well is also working with youth here in Qatar. And, with that, we're working closely with Qatar Foundation and with Lex on developing the concept of, how we can continue to build on the momentum of what Generation Amazing has accomplished post 2022, whether it's an education city, using some of the education city stadium, different aspects. This is all sort of conversations that we're having right now on continuing the legacy beyond 2022.
In terms of the challenges that young people face in Lesotho, we're only just scratching the surface of that. So we hope to continue reaching as many young people as we can. But in terms of thinking further afield, we're really keen to take our experience in social enterprise out to work with other sport for good organisations around the world. And over the last couple of months, I've been developed a program called RAFT, where we've been supporting organisations in handling the financial and sustainability challenges related to the pandemic. And I had an amazing call yesterday with an organisation called Beleni United in Zambia. And we've been working with them now for 2 months, and we advised them on setting up a soccer school that could generate income that could then be reinvested back into their social football programs. I had a catch up with them yesterday, and they've set up a school that's now generating $500 back into their programs every single month. So yeah, really powerful. And I think that could be extended to many more organizations. And yeah, going back to the collaboration and partnership point, I think nothing can be achieved without good partnerships. It's not just important, it's essential. So yeah, we're really excited about the prospect of going out and working in partnership with empower them to increase sustainability, and as a result of that, increase their impact on the lives of young people.
Steve, Jason, what you've achieved so far, what you've got left to achieve?
So much more to achieve. Always forward thinking. And I think that the one core thing that has been uttered by everybody on this call is about those partnerships, about how Nasser referred to not having to reinvent the wheel, spoke about the work that Steve has done, and how Generation Amazing can learn from some of the best practice that Steve has been able to develop. And I think that that's a core part of where the success will come, having those strong partnerships. And I've been very fortunate with what we've done at CONCACAF with our Next Play program, which I gave you some details on before. And what's been extremely exciting for us is being able to work with Generation Amazing, with Nasser and Mohammed, and of course Paulette and Michael and the team, and really look at how we can work together to share that best practice. We both have a shared vision in that part of investing in communities, investing in coaches. Nasser's mentioned some of his big picture items of trying to spread the Generation Amazing footprint across the world with so many young people and so many coaches. And we certainly share that at CONCACAF with the work what we've been doing with our Football for Social Change agenda. We really believe that we can create a sustainable network of community activators who can deliver that Football for Social Change in the heart of their communities. by the communities in their communities. And I think we absolutely share that vision. Of course, we all have a role to play. From CONCACAF's perspective, it's about supporting, training, knowledge sharing, bringing the best practice, as mentioned earlier, but it's also about recognizing that there's best practice globally. So how can we work with a Generation Amazing who's done so much fantastic work globally? How can we align some of what we believe in to ensure that the end users are getting the best possible education to pass on and to become those community leaders that we believe that they can become? And then once we have that, can we ensure that it's across all of our 41 member associations? And can we also ensure that those partnerships with our member associations, with governments, with schools, with local government, can we ensure that those partnerships and that delivery is effectively monitored and evaluated? Can we ensure that we can speak about it in the appropriate way, which will ensure that more investment will go into sport for development or football for social change? So I think what's interesting here is the different parts of that machine which are actually on this panel, and actually how we can use those partnerships effectively to ensure that more can be done and that other organizations can come in and supplement the work that we've done. So all of that, I think, is more work to be done for all of us, and certainly from CONCACAF's perspective, we're committed to doing that.
And Lex, what have you achieved, and what have you got left to achieve?
A lot, as I'm sure everyone else has said, and I'll be fast but one of the things that I absolutely love about Nasser and what he's done with Generation Amazing is that he's talking about, this is what our goal is up to 2022, and everyone's thinking about legacy as post 2022, but the legacy for the 2022 World Cup started 10 years ahead of time, and it's just incredible to kind of see that sort of strategic thinking take place. From my perspective, I'm 100% aligned with everyone else around the need for collaboration to achieve what's to come, especially in this current time. What collaboration looks like is completely different. You saw Adidas retweeting Nike and Nike congratulating Adidas. There's competitors collaborating left, right, and center, and that's because we need to at this time. Steve and his team at Kick for Life, we launched something called the Sport for Good Response Fund earlier this year, really to support organizations that were facing various challenges due to the pandemic. And Steve and Kick for Life were the first people to come to us and say, how can we help? What can we do to support the that are not only receiving funding? How can we share our social enterprise knowledge? So that kind of new approach to collaboration is so crucial in this time. And I think as we head up to 2022 and within Education City, I've only been there a short time, but not a single initiative that we're proposing or outlining is being done without partners and without engaging with different stakeholders, whether that be Generation Amazing, Education Above All, and beyond. And it just won't happen effectively without the key players in place. And it's been a joy to work within an organization that knows that and identifies that. And I think that even with the various programs that are happening right now, nothing is done in isolation. And every single kind of entity kind of understands what they're good at. And then they say, okay, we're good at this, we're good at programming, we're good at curriculum. Let's bring in someone that knows football technical support, or let's bring in someone that understands. There's all these different stakeholders that are working together, and really, I think that that's crucial to achieve the positive legacy around 2022.
Thank you. I'm just going to let myself breathe for a moment, because we could go on for days. And I wish we could, but we are restricted to an hour. As you all know, you've got homework for this evening. Sustainable development goals is one thing. Two other things from my, as I said, I've got post-it notes all around me now. something about what makes for a good partnership. I'm not going to ask the panel at this stage to answer because I realise people are up against a time constraint. But I'll leave that with everybody who's here today. 5,000 words by Friday, if you could, on that one. What makes for a good partnership? And the other one as well, and I think this goes back to what you said, Lex, is leaving a legacy is not necessarily a positive thing. It can also be a negative thing as well. And so I think in terms of understanding what a net positive legacy is that accounts for the negative parts of a legacy. And then really, how do you measure that? So 5,000 words on what makes for a good partnership by Friday, and another 5,000 words on how do you measure legacy, okay? Top submission.
Send those over to me. That would be great.
Yeah. And I've got a big box of gold stars, so I'll be handing gold stars out for. Can I just say one final thing? Actually, can I say several final things? First one is to say thank you to the partners of Generation Amazing for this event. So the strategic partner, the Qatar Foundation, the supporters, Qatar Airways, UCFB, and B4 Development, media partner, which is BeIN, and also the technical partner, which is Ooredoo. So thank you to them. Can I also say thank you as well to everybody who stayed online? We had a really, really good audience, and it's always it always says something about the power and the insights being provided by the speakers, that they can hold an audience. And my goodness, did our panel members hold the audience today? Can I also thank the panel members too? Great. As I say, it's a measure for me of how interesting I find something when I start making notes. So, really thank you for your insights, and thank you for your commitment and your passion, and thank you for your contribution. Thank you for doing things on our behalf, because this is really, really important that people like you are leading and managing these kinds of programs. Can I say one final thing, which is, and I've been getting WhatsApp, so in amongst my post-it notes and I've been getting WhatsApp messages as well. Can I thank everybody who's been here for day one of this week's events, and can I say come back tomorrow for more, and we are going to be here again tomorrow. Unfortunately, I probably won't be in most of the sessions, but it's been great being with you. It's been great that you've been able to attend, and I thank you for it. And Jason, Steve, Lex, and everybody else who's left here, stay safe, stay healthy. It's been great spending time with you. Thank you. So see you again.
Thank you, Simon.